At some point in your entrepreneurial journey, you've almost certainly been made to feel inadequate for not having a vision or a mission of some kind, for not having the equivalent of putting mankind on Mars or something like that. What happens if you don't have a big vision? Does that mean there's something wrong with you? Are you inadequate as an entrepreneur? I've spent many years being challenged on this question and having my own personal struggles with it. And I've landed on 4 separate questions that I've found personally to be quite helpful for me when I'm thinking through the question of vision. So I thought I would share these with you today so that if you have questions around what it is that you're actually doing with your life and with your business, these might help you get some way towards an answer. In case you don't know me, my name is Olly Richards. I am the founder of StoryLearning.com. I'm a mentor and advisor to other online education entrepreneurs. I'm also an author, published dozens of books and sold millions of copies. And you would think that someone that does what I do would have done everything with a big, grand vision. Right? Domination was the thing that I was always aiming for. But the truth of the matter is, if I'm being completely straight up and honest with you, the only vision that I had when I first got started back in 2013 was I never wanted to see my boss again. I wanted to quit my job. I wanted to be free to do what I wanted and to not have the boss that I had. That is all that I wanted. I didn't have a bigger vision or a bigger mission beyond that. Now, over time, as I started to join masterminds and started to be coached myself, I would be asked over and over again, so Olly, what's your vision? And I would concoct things like, well, I want to teach 1 million people to learn a new language, or I want to change the way languages are taught around the world. You've heard these sort of things before. And they're not untrue. Like, I do want to teach a bunch of people a new language. I do want to change the way that languages are taught, but I can't look at you with a straight face and say, this is what gets me up in the morning. It's not. Now, fast forward 12 years, and I'm at a slightly different stage in my life and my business career where actually I do find that I have more of a vision, and my personal and company visions are actually starting to finally take shape. But I've done all the things that I have done without any vision of any kind whatsoever. And so if you are in a similar position, I'm hoping that these are going to help. So what is vision, and do you actually need one? So the first question to ask is, do you actually need a vision at all? So why is this question important? It's because there is an implicit assumption in the business narrative that if you don't have a vision that you're working towards, that you are somehow inadequate. It's so easy for someone to write a book or stand up on a stage or lead a group and point to Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and say, look, they had this vision and this is what they achieved. But is it really the case that every single one of us, you and I, need to have a vision on this scale? Do we all need to be taking people to Mars? And I think the answer is just obviously no. And many of us get into business for lots of different reasons. You know, I got into business because I just wanted a bit of freedom. I didn't want to have a boss. I wanted to be in control. I thought I was capable of more than my pay grade would allow me for. As a starting point, we need to question this idea of, like, are we able to do valuable things in the world for ourselves and for others without some grand vision? And so the first thing I want to do is just release you from the pressure of feeling that you need to have this vision. I was at a mastermind event the other day and there were a lot of different types of entrepreneurs in this group. There were 24-year-olds making millions of dollars with all the energy in the world to go and do great things. But also in this group were a new mother who had given birth just a few months earlier. There was someone, a few people in fact, who had recently quit their jobs and they'd gone freelance. And these people were in a very different place to the 24-year-old who was making tons of money. Does someone in this position, the new mother or the person that's just quit their job, is it the right thing for them to be asking themselves, what is my vision? Or do they just need to take care of themselves for a while? Do they need to say, I'm going to spend the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years actually with my new baby, because that actually is the most important thing in my life and in their life right now? Does the person who's just quit their job to go freelance need to say, look, what I need to do for the next year or two is just build a financial buffer so I can get my own house in order and build from a place of stability and abundance, rather than making a different type of decisions in service of some random vision? It's often the case we have our own needs, and our own needs are valid. And so if you feel that you've got things in your life that are happening right now that warrant your attention, chances are they do, and chances are you should be paying attention to that. Now, the second point is that your personal vision does not have to be the same as your company vision. So let's explore this. Something I've noticed people get very hung up on is the idea that if my personal vision doesn't match my company vision, then how can I authentically lead my company? How can I corral my team around a unified vision for the company if that's not a vision that I share myself? Well, in my own case, I mean, I own 4 different companies and they all do different things. Do you think it's realistic to say that the vision for each of my businesses needs to be exactly the same as my personal vision? This concept starts to break down when you sort of take it to its logical conclusion. And like the example I gave earlier of wanting to quit my job and actually just have a bit of freedom in my life, it's perfectly possible for you to have a particular vision for your life, for your company as its own entity, to have a different kind of vision. Companies, after all, are their own entity. My business, Story Learning, that I grew for over 10 years at the helm myself, I stepped back from. I have a CEO running the business now. I am not active in the business anymore. Does my personal vision still need to be the governing force and the governing direction of the company? Well, not at all. What it actually is, the company, when it grows, it ends up becoming its own animal. It does its own things. It interacts with customers in its own way. It creates its own substance. And so a company can have its own vision that doesn't have to be connected to yours. And so if you find yourself tying yourself up in knots because you're concerned that there's some kind of inconsistency with your personal vision not being the same as the company, that's okay. Now, in my personal situation now, after 12 years, I finally actually feel that I have a business where my personal and company vision actually align, and that's with this business brand right here. And that's because what I've been able to do with this business is create a business where the activity in the business aligns with exactly what I want to be doing personally. Because my personal values revolve around teaching, creativity, and experience. And so I build this business in such a way that all of these things happen. I'm here teaching right now. I'm able to be creative and do my own things, build my own products. I run masterminds and group events that create experience for people. So I've found myself able to merge my personal and company vision, but only after 12 years. And this is one of the truths about vision, I think. Vision is often hindsight dressed up as foresight. And I'm not going to tell you that I had this vision right from the beginning. I've kind of just sidestepped my way into it. Now, with all of this said, I do think in an ideal world, your personal and company vision would be aligned. And if you find yourself in a position where, you know, what you're trying to do personally is your company and your company is you and vice versa, I do think that's the most powerful combination, because it's the sort of thing that's going to just keep you motivated to keep going and to build something incredible. But just because that's ideal, it doesn't mean that has to be the case for everyone. So do not worry if your company vision is different to yours. The thing to do is to focus on your company and then think, okay, well, what is the reality of this business now? What does it do? What is the vision? If you can have a very clearly articulated vision for your company, that's fine, and that's something that your team can rally around. Now, the third question is to ask yourself, how can I be of service to others? Now, this runs the risk of sounding a little bit trite, because it's the kind of thing that, again, it's very, very easy to say. But here's where I'm coming from with this question. I have noticed with I'm lucky to have many friends who are very successful, millionaires, etc., etc. The thing that you notice when you meet a lot of people like this is that once they have the money and the success and the fame, they very quickly realize that that is not the thing that matters. Now, it's not to minimize it, because yes, the money is important and it helps them, gives them a great life, but it's not the thing that gives them meaning. And invariably you find that the more successful people are, the more they tend to spend their time doing other things, right? Whether that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's building his after-school programs for kids, for inner city kids, or simply people who are working in their local community, helping elderly people get to the shops to buy their food. Whatever it is, you tend to see that as people get older, as they have more success, as they move towards the end of their lives, they find more value in being of service to other people. So if we accept that this is true, and if we observe this and say, this is generally what happens to people as they become older and wiser, then I think we can track this back and ask ourselves, well, is there a way? How can I take this wisdom and employ it in the here and now with what I do? How can I be more of service to others? Now, it's true that if you run an education business, then you are being of service to other people because you are creating content that helps people. But I think we can go a little bit deeper than that. Now, it is true that if you run an education business, if you make content online, then yes, you are helping people, you're teaching people, you're being of service. But I think we can dig a little bit deeper than that. And I think a lot of us have these conceptions of what we have to offer to the world, how we can help people, the impact that we can have. And if we just stop and ask the question, how can I do a little bit more of this and be a little bit more of service right now? That can open up a lot of questions that I think can lead to a worthwhile vision, something that is more profound and more meaningful. And by the way, if you're enjoying this content, you might like to download my free case study. It's called Anatomy of a $10 Million Online Education Business. It's completely free. You can download it and the link in the description. In there is a chapter on lifestyle, which, funnily enough, it's the chapter I wrote right at the end that I almost didn't put in there. But a lot of people really resonated with that and valued that. And I think it's because some of the stuff I talk about in that chapter is very kind of anti the kind of perceived, the messages that we always get about, you know, vision and mission and all this, and being a little bit more realistic about what many of us want from our businesses. So link in the description if you would like that. Now, this fourth and final question is my favorite of all. And I first learned this from Tony Robbins back in the day, and he called it the rocking chair test. And the idea is this: you are 80 years old, sitting at home in your rocking chair, you're rocking back and forth, looking back over your life. Imagine yourself in that position right now. You might like to pause the video and just think about this for a second. Allow yourself to embody this person. What does the 80-year-old version of you regret? And what do they not regret? What do they wish they'd done more of? What do they wish they'd done less of? And the reason this is so powerful is because it shifts the frame. Okay? So many of us spend our entire lives and careers essentially filling in the gap. This is the gap and the gain. A wonderful book from Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. We spend all of our time trying to close the gap between what we have now and what we want. And this focuses us very much in a mindset of deficit. Here are all the things that we don't have, and here are all the things that we want. But instead, if we reframe this and put ourselves in our 80-year-old self, looking back on our life, very quickly, this starts to bring up the question of what matters to me? I ran this exercise recently with someone who turned around and said, I instantly know what I regret. And it was not spending more time doing art. This person loves art. They're a trained artist, a fantastic artist, but they've been doing less and less of it over the years because they've been more focused on work and business. And they enjoy that. That's important for them. But they realized straight away that their 80-year-old self would deeply regret not doing more art. And so knowing this and feeling this so viscerally, it follows that, well, if you know you're going to regret not doing this, what better time to start doing more of this in your life than right now? It's a bit like the tombstone. I have a friend who writes their own epitaph every year because it just helps them get a sense of their life in perspective and understand the things that they want to be spending their life doing and not. It's a totally different way from coming at this question of vision. And it's just a way of tapping into you, the authentic you, the real you that has thoughts and feelings and wishes and desires, and understanding, hey, for me, this is what I want in my life, and I'm going to make this part of the vision for how I want to spend my days. You know, it's possible to spend so much of your life working on things for the wrong reasons. You know, one reason can be because you've got this perceived gap that you need to fill in your life, some kind of unmet achievement. Another example is when you feel like you just got lucky with your current business, so you better not do anything too risky because otherwise your luck will run out and you'll never be able to make any money or have any success ever again. But by getting clear on that, seeing that clearly and reframing it, you can actually open up a whole bunch of bigger and better opportunities. And in this video over here, I explain exactly why that happens and what you can do about it.